All right, everybody, welcome back to Hawk After Dark with your host, Hawk. That's me. I'm recording this on Sunday, September 22nd at about 5:30 p.m. I read a very lengthy and very, disturbing, I guess, article in The Atlantic this week by a woman named Hannah Rosen. She and her wife live in northeastern Washington, D.C., and this is an article about it's entitled "The Insurrectionists Next Door," and it's about how down the street from them, almost 2 years ago, the mother of Ashley Babbitt and the wife of Guy Reffitt moved in as part of the J6 political prisoner movement, I guess, and to spearhead that. And, Northeast Washington, D.C. is kind of like Brooklyn, multicultural, multiracial, heavily Democratic. And everybody who's listening to this knows who Ashley Babbitt is. For those who don't know who Guy Reffitt is, he was the first January 6th insurrectionist to be convicted of federal crimes. He went to the Capitol on January 6th. He was armed with a holstered handgun, and he had an AR-15 that he left locked in his car. He had driven there from Texas. He was a member of the Three Percenters, and he was the guy who his teenage son had turned him into the FBI. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But imagine living in Washington, D.C. in a neighborhood that's very liberal, very democratic, very multicultural. And these two folks move in for the purpose of, staging a protest movement at the D.C. jail, where a lot of these defendants are not only being held awaiting trial, but some of them are serving their sentences there. Anybody who got more than a year is serving those sentences in federal prison at other facilities. I take it for granted living in the Bay Area that I don't have to deal with these folks or interact with them in my everyday life. I often make the joke that the only time that I have to interact with or deal with Trump supporters is when I have to trek over to the Central Valley, an hour and a half, 2 hours away, when I go to buy ammunition for my firearms, because that's pretty hard to come by in the Bay Area. But it just, when I started reading this article, I was just imagining, like, what if people like this moved in near me? And it's a very in-depth article. It's extremely well written. There's a lot of layers to it. It's just tragic in so many ways, because it just highlights what the actual consequences just to everyday Americans has been who have fallen for Donald Trump's lies. And he knows that he's lying to them when he says the 2020 election was stolen. He knows that he is lying to them, when he led them to believe that they could go to the Capitol on January 6th, they could fight like hell, they could stop the certification of Joe Biden's victory, and they could, essentially reinstall Donald Trump as president for a second term that he didn't earn. And I think these two women demonstrate those consequences so clearly. I mean, Ashley Babbitt is dead. And Guy Reffitt was sentenced to something like 85 months in federal prison. And that's heavy stuff, and it's, you think about some of the Three Percenters and the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. I mean, some of those guys got 10, 15, 20 plus years in federal prison because they believed Donald Trump's bullshit And you couple that with the fact that, you know, I mean, I read a quote from one investigator, FBI agent, I can't remember who it was, that said, yeah, this is the largest crime that's ever been prosecuted by the federal government in the history of this country. I mean, there are thousands of defendants, but it was also the most recorded crime in history. Meaning, like, these defendants were live streaming, they were, shooting videos and posting them to their Facebook pages. And, Guy Reffitt was wearing a tactical helmet with a GoPro camera mounted on it. He recorded everything he did and said at the Capitol on January 6th. Obviously, all of that became evidence to be used against him during his criminal trial. And his son testified against him